well as a Bachelor of Arts in Music Literature and Performance from Northeastern University. Her main areas of research include music criticism and reception studies of women musicians during the 19th through early 20th centuries. She also applies digital humanities tools and methods to research in music history and investigates platforms for open access research and publishing. She currently serves as the coordinator of the Digital Humanities Roundtable at the NLA and is working on several forthcoming publications about 19th century pianist Kijas, including a digital project called Documenting Kijas. And her presentation today is the Encoded Medieval Antiphoner, an open access digital source for music and liturgical pedagogy and scholarship. So please welcome Anna.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And thank you everybody for being here today. So today I'm going to talk about a project that is still in development, but we've been doing some exciting work, and so when I saw the call for NEMLA for proposals, I jumped at it and said, you know, we're going to have some of this done and a lot of ideas for what we're going to do, and I'd love to share it with everybody here and maybe even get some of your feedback for what you think might be useful to a scholar or a student or somebody who's just interested in medieval antiphoners. So hopefully this is interesting to you, and I'll welcome your questions at the end. And I'm going to try to switch back and forth between my PowerPoint and some live online work, just to give you an idea of some of the interactive features that we're talking about. So there may be a little bit of a bump in between there. So in today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the Encoded Medieval Antiphoner, which is a project currently under development at Boston College. This is a collaborative project involving Boston College librarians, such as myself, our system staff, faculty, and students from the College of Arts and Sciences, and several external music researchers and developers. In this project, we are applying music encoding, or MEI, as well as using open source tools on an early 14th century Franciscan antiphoner in order to enable interactive functionality beyond the pages of the physical manuscript, as well as to provide access to data for manipulation, analysis, and future research or scholarship. I will begin by sharing some background and unique aspects about this manuscript, followed by our project's goals, our core standards and technology that we're implementing, and developments on this project so far. So this is just the first page from the manuscript. And this is a manuscript that is held by the John J. Burns Library, which is our special collections library at Boston College. And let's see here. Just to show you what our antiphonor kind of looks like here. So you can see, it is bound between leather-covered boards. So this is just an image of our antiphonor. You can actually explore it currently. These are all static pages of the antiphoner that have been digitized in our special collections library. But as I go on with my presentation, you'll see that there's a reason why I want to make this more interactive, because essentially right now you can only just look at the image and the metadata, and that's it. So this text is bound with leather-covered boards and has 119 parchment folios. And it includes text and notation for antiphons and responsories, for the entire annual calendar of saints' days. It was used by monks chanting the daily office of the Roman Church. Although this manuscript may not be considered a superb example of calligraphy and illumination, it is interesting for several reasons. First, it contains a number of palimpsests where the original copy, the text and or music, is erased and overwritten, either by the original copyist or a later scribe. And you'll see in the upper right-hand side where the circle is there, there's a little cross symbol, and then that corresponds to the bottom of the page where they had written in text that either they forgot to include or maybe it was added at a later point as new text was added to the chant in later years or decades. Another interesting feature is a brief passage of written polyphony found in an otherwise entirely monophonic manuscript. And so you'll see here, over Celi Solem Imitantes, you have a polyphonic line going, just basically the first line, which I cut out here from the manuscript, is available, and you can see the polyphony there. And if you're interested in looking at the whole page, it's folio 89B, so you can go there in our special collections viewer. But that's the only instance really where there's a polyphonic line. It's kind of out of the blue. We don't know why it's there. While the exact provenance and date of the manuscript remains a mystery, we know it's from approximately between 1300 and 1350. Dr. Michael Noon, who is one of the faculty I'm working with, believes that it may have been copied by a German scribe for use in Germany, based on a rubric indicating the beginning of the second nocturne at Matins of St. Agnes, which is written in German. And you'll see that right here. It says Der Ander Nocturnus in German, and then it continues on in Latin. There is another unique feature in this manuscript, and this is the inclusion of Corpus Christi, Sacerdos in Aeternum, and pardon my Latin pronunciation. If any of you are maybe experts at Latin, you might be able to say that a little more fluently than I can. And this supports a later dating for its copying because this was a new office for the Feast of Corpus Christi, which was added by Pope Urban IV in 1264. So we know that this manuscript existed at least after that point in time. But again, there are many mysteries around this manuscript, and so one of the reasons why we chose this manuscript for this specific project, not only to make it interactive, but to hopefully increase its awareness of this work in our collection, and to maybe have a conversation with other scholars about these mysteries that we are just still trying to figure out, or hopefully lead to new scholarship. The opportunity to create a project featuring this 14th century Antiphoner arose for a number of reasons. So Dr. Michael Noon, who is in our music department, was interested in this manuscript, and he had conducted an initial research with another researcher from Australia, Graham Skinner. And they had started to compile an inventory from this Antiphoner. And so you'll see just a snapshot here of the liturgical occasions that they started to identify by folio, and there are 50 total, and as well as a full Antiphoner inventory, which identified 846 incipits, and these were categorized by the occasion, the office, genre, position, and the incipit and mode. And in addition to working on this project and doing their initial research, there's going to be an exhibit at the McMullen Museum of Art at BC entitled Pages of the Past, and this manuscript will be one of the items on display. So again, this was another impetus for us to do a research project and a digital presentation that could hopefully make this work more interactive than it is at this time. Another reason why we were able to start this project was because we have a newly formed digital scholarship group at BC, which I had joined in February of this past year. And so now we are actually able to offer support and collaboration for digital scholarship projects. Motivated by these events, we applied and received an academic technology innovation grant from Boston College, which is supporting the research and development of this project in 2 phases. The first through August of 2016, and then the second through December of 2017. So I'll go over some of the project goals, and I'll focus in on each of these points more as I go on with my presentation. The main goals of this project are to make the Antiphoner interactive beyond its current static state. So you had seen the Antiphoner in our special collections viewer, where you can just go through page by page and look at the image, or you can read the metadata, but that is the extent of what you can do. Our goal includes creating an open access and responsive website with a dynamic presentation layer that will include the ability to search through content, potentially access multimedia, and have more interactivity than our current special collections viewer allows now. Another goal is to use and develop open source technology because it encourages and supports further development in the open source community, as well as sharing of documentation and data. And to contribute our data to the scholarly community through a collaboration with Kijas, which is a database for Latin ecclesiastical chant, and to develop software, workflows, and documentation which will inform not only our future projects, but others who are doing similar work elsewhere. And as I mentioned earlier, the time frame for this first phase is through August of 2016. And this actually coincides with when the physical exhibition at the McMillan Museum will go on display. So they will open their exhibit in September of 2016 with this manuscript as one of the pieces. During the second phase, which will end approximately in December of 2017, we are hoping to work on another edition of Liturgical Chant. So it's not an actual manuscript, it's just an early edition of a Morales Missa. And we hope to explore the potential of developing content for a multi-touch table interface. So we have quite a few future plans and ideas in place already for this. So I had shown you this image already. This is currently the catalog record with all the metadata about the Antiphoner, and then you can go in and view the images. But we wanted to think about how do we make the text, the notation, as well as other elements in this manuscript interactive. You can view the digital images of this Antiphoner, and you can read through the metadata, but you can't actually search the manuscript for the melody, you can't search text, you can't isolate specific data, such as a liturgical occasion, genre, or mode. You can't try to find patterns in the melodic chants. And so this is where we had to look to existing standards and technologies, or think about developing new ones, which would enable us to make these pages come to life. During the grant writing process, we discussed our vision for creating an interactive manuscript. We reviewed examples of projects and documentation elsewhere that we could apply to this liturgical monophonic chant with new notation. And so we decided to use these core standards and technology: music encoding, the Kijas database, and diva.js. And I'll go through each of these in more detail, but you can see music encoding. I think most of us here have heard of it, maybe participated in it. It's an open source effort that is working to assist scholars and people interested in encoding music. And the one main feature of music encoding that really distinguishes it from just plain music XML is the fact that you can retain structure and semantics of your original notation in MEI. And that's really something that we're interested in doing. Kijas database, this is an enormous inventory of Latin chant sources. International libraries and archives hold these manuscripts and have been providing their data into this inventory and this database. So it's a wonderful resource. And diva.js is open source JavaScript viewer for documents, and it runs on an image server that is compliant with an international standard that is trying to, again, make contents in archives more accessible and interoperable with other environments as well as other repositories, so that you're not just creating something in your own little box without allowing other people to access it from the outside, remotely or through APIs, for example. And I'll talk about these more as I go along. So over a 2-month period this summer, I worked with an undergraduate student who was supposed to be here presenting with me. However, he's now a grad student at BU, and so he has a seminar today. So he chose to attend the seminar rather than come here. But he worked to transcribe each of these 846 incipits, and then inputted them into a template that I had created using the components for a NEWS module in the MEI. And so if you're really interested in the NEWS module, go to Chapter 6 in the MEI documentation, and you can find wonderful information there. So essentially, you'll see the incipits on the left, and they are repeated a number of times just for our own tracking purposes. And then you'll see it is broken down by syllable, u, nus, x, du, o, bus, we, etc., etc., etc. And then we are retaining the illuminated letters color. So the U is in blue, so we want to be able to render that in MEI, and we retain that. Each time the incipit has a newly illuminated letter, the color changes, and we're retaining that information. So Dr. Noon, Jonathan, and I, we have been communicating and meeting over the past few months in order to address our work, look at the process, understand what is it that we're actually doing, and to review each other's work. And so our intention was to represent each incipit in the manuscript, which I've already pointed out, in its original structure, as well as preserve the semantics of the new notation. And so you'll see the new names, punctum, clivis, punctum, podatus, etc., etc. Each of these neumes is identified, and then the pitches are identified going over to the right, as well as the octave. And there is a bit more there that you don't see in this slide, but I have another slide further down. And we're also capturing the position of where the syllable appears, the noting the position of each marked up syllable. So we're identifying whether it's the initial syllable, it's in the middle, or if it's a terminal syllable. All of this is really important, again, to retain the semantic structure of the notation. Other information like the folio numbers, the sequence numbers are also going to be captured so that we can move between our original images that are in the digital collections viewer, which will be hosted somewhere else at a later time, or to be able to identify where is this incipit in this manuscript. So all of this is going to be inputted into our files and captured. And this is just an example of the encoded structure when it is recreated in an MEI file. This is the template that we're working with right now, and you'll see again what was in the spreadsheet from left to right is now from top to bottom identified, again, per syllable of each incipit. Once we review all of these incipits, again, there's 846, so it's taking a little bit of time to go through and make sure we haven't missed anything or misspelled any incipits. We will be writing a script with one of our developers to automatically take all the data from our spreadsheet, not just ingest it into Contus, but also to be able to transform it into an MEI file or multiple files. Because imagine inputting 846 incipits in this kind of form. It's a little tedious and is also going to open up a lot of room for error. So I've spoken a bit about Contus. Most of you may have used it or come across it working with students, or maybe for your own research or for reference at your libraries. If not, I encourage you to take a look at it. It's a wonderful resource. I'm going to go to a live shot of it now, actually. Let's see here. Oops, that's not it. Here it is. Okay, so this is Contus. It's hosted at Waterloo in Canada. And as I said already, it is a database of Latin chants. And so they currently have over 130 manuscripts identified, as well as early printed books. And so we wanted to ensure that the data we produce is open, interoperable, and extensible. By creating MEI files, we are using a standard that is developed and embraced by a wider community, which hopefully will make our work more valuable and reusable by students, librarians, scholars, and other people interested in this music. Because the data we've created for this manuscript is unique and of interest to a specific discipline and community, we didn't want to just make a standalone project. So as I had said already, we didn't want to just create our own little box or boutique project that really didn't impact other works or other works could not impact our work. And so we chose to collaborate with Contus. Once our grant was approved, I reached out to Deborah Lacoste, who is the project manager for Contus, and Jan Kolacek, who is the developer at Contus. We informed them about our project. They were very excited that they were going to have a new source of data. And we started to discuss, how we should be structuring our data. Luckily, we had that inventory that was already compiled, and so we started to build on top of that. PowerPoint. So as I had shown you earlier, we had an inventory already, and we, working with the folks at Cantus, we were able to identify additional criteria that we needed to include or make changes to what we had already inputted. So for example, we had already captured the occasion of the feast of each of these incipits, but we needed to standardize this. So rather than writing in, Andrew, which is just in English, we had to conform to the Latin standardized spelling, so we inputted it as Andrea. And then the offices and the genres and the positions are all identified with individual letters or a code in Cantus rather than the full word. So we added the office codes, the genre codes, the position codes. The other aspect of this was to assign a Cantus ID. And this was important so that we could then match it up with other contents in the database. And you'll see to the far right on the bottom there, the Cantus ID is identified with the yellow header there. So each of these incipits was cross-checked with the Cantus database, and we had to determine whether it matched elements such as the feast, office, genre, and mode. And if it did, then we had a match. We would put in the incipit Cantus ID. If our incipit differed slightly from the standardized text, we noted this in the spreadsheet. And so we have, in our manuscript, there may be some slight differences or unique aspects that we want to retain for our project, but once we put it into Cantus, it does become standardized. So the texts are written in according to whatever they determine is the Latin standardized spelling. We are currently reviewing this data, as I've already mentioned. And once it's reviewed, which should be in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll be ready to then ingest it into the Cantus database. And this is what a record looks like in Cantus. You can go in and search in the right-hand corner there in the search box. So you can type an incipit text, you can type in an ID, an office code, genre code, etc., and you'll be taken to your results list. And so this is the first incipit in our Antiphoner. This is not coming from our source yet because it hasn't been ingested, but you'll see, the incipit code, or excuse me, the incipit line up top, and then all of the data about that incipit, and then all of the melodies that are related from other resources. So these are all identified by the rhythm numbers, rhythm sigla, and so you can go back and see which institution holds a manuscript that has similar data to what your manuscript holds. The other aspect of Cantus is that the melodies are displayed using a Volpiano font, and so they are not being rendered from MEI at this point. They are entered in by hand, or if you have a spreadsheet of data, they can be ingested and then transformed into the pitches you see on the screen here. But therefore, each incipit text and melody will be searchable, and so that's one of the features we really liked about Cantus, and the fact that we would be able to just do this pretty seamlessly from the data we have. A positive outcome which has arisen from our collaboration with Cantus is that we discovered Jan and the folks are very interested in exploring how to actually take MEI and render it. And so currently, as you just saw, they are displaying it with a font called Volpiano, but working with us, our goal is to explore how to render new notation with our MEI files using Verovio. And currently, Verovio is focused on common Western music notation, so it doesn't yet accept new notation. So this is an area that we're going to be exploring as part of this project. How do we take new notation and render it into SVG so that you can then see it on a screen? And this could potentially, assist other scholars who are interested in or already using MEI, and rather than having to input their own data into Volpiano font to display in Cantus, they just send off their MEI, which would then be transformed. So this could hopefully impact not only our project in a positive way, but other scholars and the Cantus community who are also interested in this work. So in addition to making the data accessible in the Cantus database, we have implemented our own instance of diva.js. And diva.js, as I mentioned already, is an open source JavaScript image viewer and presentation layer. This software was developed by the Distributed Digital Music Archives and Libraries Lab at McGill University in Montreal, Canada, and it does have an active developer community. It allows images to be viewed in several different layouts, including book pages, single images, or gallery-style images. It also has plugins which allow animation of page scrolling, page aliases for multiple identifiers, so permanent links, metadata display, as well as annotation or highlighting in your manuscript or your images. And we chose to use Diva for a number of reasons. First, it provides a fast viewing experience utilizing minimum bandwidth or high-resolution document images. As I mentioned earlier, they're served up using an image server, which is compatible with the International Image Interoperability Framework. And it is open source software, and that was very important to us. The DDMAL group has been a leader in a number of initiatives around digital music and computational musicology projects, including optical music recognition, MEI, and automatic music classification. So they've been working at this for years and have a number of projects to show off, and we felt very confident that this open source tool would allow us to make our Antiphoner more interactive. The other really great feature of using Diva is that it pulls the metadata that we are going to put in and the data into Cantus right back into Diva. So we will be able to get our data right out and view it alongside our Antiphoner. And I'll show you that in just a second. So what will this interactive manuscript look like? This is an example from the Cantus Ultimus project, which is from DDMAL. And this is sort of an out-of-the-box instance of Diva where you have your image on the left, and you can zoom in, you can look at it as a single page, multiple pages, side by side, and you have your metadata viewer on the right. And so in its most kind of basic form, once you have your metadata viewer set up to pull from Cantus database, your chants are displayed in the right side, and they correspond to what's appearing on the left here. And let's see here, I'm just going to go to a live instance of it so you can see. Okay, so this is just looking right at a page from the manuscript. This is not our manuscript, by the way, this is just a demo. You can then go to view the chants here, and this again is the data being pulled right back out of Cantus, and you'll have the ability to just look through your sequence, feast, office, genre, mode. If there's full text, it will appear here. This does not have full text. But this gives you an idea of what kind of functionality you can already have using Diva and Cantus, where currently we have none of this in our viewer, in our special collections viewer. So you'll be able to view these elements associated with the chant and the instrument text. And you can also search. So you will be able to search based on a variety of text fields that you can enable. and including notation or pitch. So if you choose to search for a specific pattern, you can type in your pitches just using your letters on your keyboard, and it will pull out the chants associated with that pattern. And then you can click on that chant, and it will then take you to the page. So this is sort of the basic version plus the contours, and we're looking to do a little bit more. This is a starting point, which we already feel is going to give us a lot more interactivity than we have with our current viewer. And so we're very excited to see what other functionality we can implement and develop for our manuscript. And so I'll just give you kind of an idea of some of the things we're looking at. We're hoping to enable viewing or juxtaposing non-chronological pages from the manuscript. So if we're interested in finding all instances of maybe a melodic pattern, so D, E, F, we want to be able to pull out all the pages and view them on the screen together, as well as the chants or the pattern that we were interested in, or whatever the element is. Currently, you can just view, one single page, or you can go and pull up your results list, and then you just click through, and you have to either open multiple thumbnails in your browser tab, or multiple pages. So we're looking to introduce some other functionality that currently doesn't exist. We're also looking to apply annotation tools so that if we're working with students or even the public, and you see something really interesting, you can start annotating in the manuscript, and to be able to save that to your own personal account, and then take that back and either use it in a classroom setting or for your own research. We also want to embed audio and to be able to highlight some of the incipits as they're playing. And so functionality like this exists with other tools and scripting, but not within Diva. So we're hoping to add to what Diva already offers. And we are working with the developers at Diva and having a number of conversations with them so that we can inform their work and they can inform what we're doing. So I'm going to move from showing you the possibilities of what we're doing. I went through some of these already kind of live. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we keep track of all this stuff. So some of the more practical things that are involved with projects. And you may be using different tools, but we're currently using a project management tool called Asana, which allows us to keep track of what tasks we have, when they're due, how many are completed, who's working on what, and to have conversations within one tool rather than going through various emails or having to use a number of other software or collaboration tools. So this is one way that we're working together in one area. We do use Google Drive for collaborative work on spreadsheets and documents, as I showed you some of those spreadsheets before, as well as something called HackPad. And if you're not familiar with it, at the end I have links to some of these resources so you can take a look for yourself. And we also track changes and contribute our data to GitHub. So our library does have a GitHub account. We just set one up for the Digital Scholarship Group, and we're hoping that all of our files associated with this Antiphoner project, especially the ones where we're doing more customized work or development, we're going to upload everything into GitHub for documentation and for other people to use and to collaborate. So that was just to give you kind of an idea of what's behind the scenes, what we're doing to keep track of it all. The one thing I really do like is the ability to have this little dashboard, and that I just cut out and put on the screen, but you have a page within your site where you can go to a dashboard and actually see month by month, what's your progress and how many tasks have been accomplished and how many tasks are still remaining, and that's been useful. Okay, I'm finishing up. So, we are still early in the project's development. As you can see, there are many tasks ahead of us. We're reviewing our data, we're going through and making sure our image server, our Diva instance is running well. Once this project is complete, there will be several points of access, which I've already mentioned. So we're hoping that this will meet the needs of our various users. We'll have an open access website. We'll have the ability for people to access our data in Conjur's database, as well as putting everything into GitHub. So again, there are slightly different audiences for those different access points, but we hope that this will allow us to promote our work and our content. So these partners here, I've mentioned a few names as I've gone through, and I just wanted to show you kind of who's involved currently at this stage. We have some internal partners at BC and beyond. University of Sydney, one of our researchers is from, as well as our external consultants and the support that we're currently receiving. And I have a page with my resources, so if you're interested in learning more, we do have more information at our Digital Scholarship Group website. We have a GitHub account, and then you can go to some of the other pages if you're interested in any of the software platforms that I've discussed today. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to talk more with you. As you can see, there's probably a lot more details that I could go into, but thank you. You've been a gracious audience, so I'll finish here. Thank you.
We've got about 5 minutes for questions. So questions for Anna.
Yes. This is a wonderful undertaking, and I think it's a fabulous presentation. And I'm just wondering, in your new role at Boston College, how do you manage this, huge responsibility managing this project, and with perhaps other responsibilities that you have, perhaps you're meeting with students and teaching them some of these skills. So I'm just curious, as this whole arena is evolving, how are you managing all the responsibilities that you have?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? How we manage all of this, how we balance it all. So I started at BC in February, and I jumped right in, as you can see. And we have a number of projects that are kind of getting off the ground. This is one of the biggest projects at this time, partly because there are so many different, there's a number of people involved, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of different technologies that we're using. I'm kind of running it as a project manager, and my own music background and knowledge of what we can do with the MEI, for example, and just being able to speak with the music faculty and the students about this content in the same language has been really great. So my role is to work on projects as well as to do individual consultations and trainings. So this is a full-time gig, and right now I've been able to balance it in terms of focusing on the priorities of the project, the tasks and when they're due. So having deadlines has been really useful, because I can say to the project developer, the web developer, we need to have this done by October 30th, and he'll go and work on that part of it, and then I'll check in. So being able to assign tasks and keep people with, to deadlines is something that I'm really on top of. Otherwise, it can get, you can get kind of stuck, or you can fall back. So as it grows, I'm sure that it will be more challenging, and we hope to have more people working with us to actually grow the program. Sarah?
I have a question about Diva. Is that something that you are going to plug into your current, and I know you currently have pages in an online platform. So is that something that will work with what you've already got, or do you have to transfer everything into Diva?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So right now, what the Special Collections Library uses for anything they digitize is Digitool, and they are looking to move away from that. They're not happy with it. And we're also working on Fedora with Hydra in a box, so that's hopefully where we're going to. Diva is something that we are implementing outside of the current viewer, for the Digitool viewer. So we have server space, and we've installed Diva, we've installed an image server, and all of the images from the manuscript are going to live on the image server and be run through the viewer, the Diva viewer. So it is separate from our current special collections viewer. There's no intention to combine the two, especially because they're going to be moving away at some point anyway. With the digital scholarship work that I do, there's going to be quite a bit of experimentation, so not necessarily everything we do is going to be running on our standard or enterprise platforms that are already in place. And so this is one example of that.
Any last questions? From Jerry.
Are there any audio recordings of the music?
Of this specific Antiphoner, Dr. Michael Noon has led an ensemble and has recorded some of the content from this Antiphoner, not the full Antiphoner, but there's about 5 or 6 chants that he's recorded so far. So we will be using some of his work, and there may be an opportunity to do more.
Well, thank you, and hopefully we will continue these discussions over lunch.